QuailOS.com. Welcome to the live stream.
Hey guys, it's Christian here with Undique. This edition of QuailOS TV, I gonna show you some small enhancement but useful. And while I'm checking if I'm actually live, I will, yes I am, I will dive right into it. So I'm gonna go down there where I'm usually hanging out. If you're new here, Quail OS is a software, and I show you in a second how that looks like. Dooby. Here we go. No, where is it today? Hey, let me switch around. No, that's what happens in the background. Here we are. Okay. Well, it's live, right? So, QuailOS.com, that's the software for all modern farmers, people with birds, people with cattle, with all kinds of livestock. And recently a nice user reached out to me. I don't know if I have the permission to mention her farm name, but if you're watching, I think her name was Shelly. She reached out and said, listen Christian, Quail OS sounds cool. I use it already for my quail, but I do have ducks. So in the hatch tracking, in the old days, we had here up to 25 days of pre-selection. But yeah, that's the Muscovy duck. That's what Shelly is raising. And she asked, hey, can you extend the days that I can actually track with the calendar and the hatch tracking here, the hatching of my ducks as well? And so yes, within the same day we got the ticket, we updated the system, we did some common presets here for people who are new, who don't know exactly how long the incubation is. And for the pros amongst you, you can choose your specific day set. It's up to 60 days now. I think that even covers emos now. We have emos here with 52 days as a preset. So now you can really pretty much track any kind of bird you want to hatch out here in the hatch tracking. So that's a new feature within Quail OS. It calculates then the lockdown and the expected hatch date automatically based on your start date. You can of course modify the lockdown date as well as the hatch day. I know some people count the first day as day 0, some other people count the first day as day 1. You put it in there as you want, and then you get it in the calendar. Down in the office section is a calendar that you can synchronize with your Apple or Android device. Then you get a pop-up on your mobile phone and get a reminder when your hatch is due to lockdown or the actual hatch. Okay, what else is new? We did a lot of work behind the scenes, so the system itself loads much quicker, especially for people who get a lot of orders in. It loads very fast, and also the start page as well. The Android app is on the Google Play Store, so go ahead and download it there if you like. For Apple, you can install it as an app. There is always, when you visit it on your Safari browser, there is a little pop-up down there. We designed a little bit the start page new. The farm wiki becomes more and more traction, so we see more articles in there, more people use it. We still look for contributors. At the end of the year, we're gonna raffle out between the top contributors a free gold subscription, so you can manage everything in Quail OS, including all your bank accounts and all that stuff. So start contributing and check it out. If you guys want to be on Quail OS TV, which we have here in the office section, just use the hashtag QuailOS on any YouTube video. Then it pops up automatically in the approval queue. So if it's anything farm related, a how-to video, anything quail, duck, chicken related, put in Quail OS if you want to contribute here to the TV channel, that there's not always my face smiling from here, but also yours. So that would be cool if you like to do that. So today, episode 13, the story behind. So that's a little older recording, but pretty, it's still present in a way of the story behind of why I called it Quail OS. And I was invited by Clayton. He's a UK podcaster. I think the top-rated podcast in the United Kingdom for pets. And since my business has to do a lot with pets, even though, yeah, quail, I consider it not necessarily as a pet. I know many people do, especially the button quail. But since my company does also pet treats, I was invited to that podcast. It was super interesting. Actually met Clayton here in New Jersey in person, and it turns out we used to work for the same company in Ireland, as he is half Irish and half British. And it turns out we know the same people over there as well on the other side of the pond. So it was pretty cool conversation. So I won't talk much longer. I'm gonna put on now that recording so you hear a little bit in an interview style where Clayton and I chat about my company Undique and why I developed Quail OS. So have fun watching, and I wish you guys a successful week ahead. So let's get started.
Welcome to Pet Business Disruptors. I am Clayton and I am here today with Christian Greninger of Undique. I hope I've pronounced that all right, Christian, but yeah, welcome on, man.
Thank you. And you pronounced it perfectly. Thank you.
Years of practice speaking. I was pretending to speak German. So, Christian, do you want to just lay down what you do? Because obviously you do quite a lot of stuff. So, and you have like quite an interesting sort of business model. So if you can just lay down what you do for us.
Sure. So my name is Christian. I created Undique.us 6 years ago. It started off as a small quail farm here in New Jersey, right outside of New York City. And over the years, I added on different venues for my business. So initially, I just wanted to keep some quail to have fresh egg here. Fresh eggs for myself. I used to keep chicken when I lived in Ireland, and but chicken was a bit problematic in my neighborhood. So my wife said, "What about quail?" And so I started off with quail. Eventually, got too many eggs, like everybody does when you start raising birds. Then I started selling those eggs, and then I developed an entire pet product line out of the quail bird, and that's expanding now into other types of dog treats or cat toys and so on as well. And then I developed a network of farms to help out each other. So in order to fulfill all the orders I got on my website and on Amazon and all the different sales channels, I developed a network of quail farms, which is currently 14 farms in 10 different US states. And then earlier this year, I launched a software called QuailOS.com, which is kind of an operating system. It's a web app which helps farms, poultry farms, any farm really, to do direct-to-consumer shipping, inventory tracking, production tracking, and marketing, and much more. So it's has developed over the years, but I kind of cover a niche, which is poultry and game birds, and I really provide from the tools for the farmer down to the marketing, to the production planning and the actual production of the dog treats and cat toys and pet treats. That's kind of the whole portfolio what my company does. And I love it. I do it now since 4 years full time. I used to be an IT engineer, a senior sales engineer for IT systems. That's what brought me to the US initially. And now I'm a full-time farmer and IT provider for farms.
Yeah. And we both had the same job as well. That which is the wildest, which is the wildest thing, that me in 1997 and you in 2004 used to work at exactly the same place in Ireland, which was absolutely crazy, wasn't it?
It is a small world. Yeah, that's so funny. When we first met, we talked about Ireland, and you're like, "Okay, what did you do there?" And I was like, "Oh, I worked in a call center at first to learn a bit English because I'm Austrian, German speaker native, right? So English is my third language. And yeah, I ended up in Ireland, in Cork, where you used to work as well. At the same company, we know the same people. We used to go to the same pubs or restaurants, right? It's hilarious. Yeah, it's a small world. Guys, Europe is usually not that small, but Island kind of is.
Especially Cork, I mean, and Clonakilty, to be honest. I mean, it's West Cork is a smaller place than people realise, I think. But yeah, so like obviously you started off like with your quail farms, and what sort of made you sort of like think, okay, I want to get into making quail like dog treats? Because obviously you've got legislation in the US, USDA, there's all these different things, and I think a lot of that sort of stuff would put a small farmer off, like quite honestly. And shipping eggs, I mean, the paperwork involved and that sort of stuff. Like what sort of like made you think, okay, first of all, I'm going to do this, but I'm also going to do all these legislative hoops? I'm assuming your IT background really helped in all this.
Yeah, so the IT background is helpful in regards to use the right tools to get the right documentation done. Like, for example, as you said, shipping eggs, right? You need to be MPIP certified. That's the National Poultry Improvement Program, MPIP. So that's in the end, a simple procedure, but most farmers are a little afraid of it because the government comes to visit you and you have to test your birds. They have, they take a swab and they do a blood test under the wing to make sure that the polyroom disease as well as avian influenza is not present in your flock. And then you get basically a number assigned in the MPIP database with login credentials, and then you can always file for a sales report, right? And that database is over 20 years old. It's like, complicated to handle. And filing such a report takes you for each order like 2 minutes or so. And so with my IT background, I have automatized that now. So within the shipping software I provide, you click a button and it files that sales report for you. So that saves me a ton of work. In my network of farms, we shipped over 6,000 orders last year. So if you imagine, if I would be quick and just take a minute to file a report, there would be 6,000 minutes to file that report manually. Now it's just a click of a button and then the report is filed. So enormous time savings to be compliant for the farms using QuailOS. So I first used it internally and now I made it available for everybody. What brought me to make the dog treats later on was my dog Hazel. She is a Labradoodle and she comes from Pennsylvania, Paradise, Pennsylvania, from a lovely Amish farm. And when we first got Hazel, she was a very little cute redhead. And she was my first dog, right? And I guess it's like with your first dog, it's like with your first child, you want to do everything right. And so raw feeding became a topic. I immediately saw that she loved the quail eggs, what I gave her raw on her food. And then I realized, okay, so she loves it. So probably other dogs do that, love treats as well. And as it is when you keep birds, they get older, you need to replace the breeders. So you suddenly have quail meat. And quail meat is a bit gamey. Some people like to, have that on the barbecue. I tried that too, but I guess I maybe didn't have the best recipe because my wife didn't like it that much. Me, honestly, if you always used to eat chicken and then suddenly you eat a game bird, it is a bit more gamey. So I figured, okay, now I have the quail meat. I might as well make dog treats out of it. And with that, for my own dog, that she liked it so much, I figured, okay, there's for sure a market for that. I gave it to some friends, family, neighbors, quail jerky, and some other treats I made from the bird. And from a kind of farming perspective, but also being a good steward of what nature gives us to work with these lovely quail birds, I just wanted to make sure there's no waste, right? And so if you have the eggs, then you have the meat, you have the wings, you have the heads, you have the feet, and every single part of the quail can be used. Using their poop for my organic garden in the backyard to use that as a fertilizer, which is now, for example, as we see fertilizer prices do go up in the US as well because of what's going on in the world. It's lovely to know that I have an endless supply of fertilizer available for my garden without paying an extra cent for that. So it kind of all developed year over year to the portfolio what we offer now on Undique.us with over 100 different SKUs in regards to pet products, and then the eggs in all kinds of colors and variations, what nature gives us to work with. So it was an evolution, and I just worked through the hoops of what you need to do with the government, which is in the US, honestly, a little easier than it is in Europe. I mean, I was 19 when I had my first company in Austria, and that took me several weeks to kind of get the company started. Here in the US, to get the company started takes you maybe 15 minutes online to have an LLC and a bank account ready to go, and then you basically have a company. That was definitely in the old days in Austria much more complicated with compliance and taxes and all of this stuff. Here it's definitely more friendly for businesses, for entrepreneurs to get started. So, and there's a lot of support from the USDA or from the Small Business Administration as well to help people get started with their company.
So just looking at quail as a product, obviously, I think a lot of people don't realize, obviously, the benefits, they say, especially in eggs for quails. Like quail eggs are far more nutritious than, they say, chicken eggs. And they also have riboflavin as well. Like, how much into, let's say, the nutritional health benefits have you looked into when it comes to quail for dogs?
I looked a lot into it in the beginning. Honestly, I started with that because my wife, she has peppers and the real hot stuff back in the garden, right? And so we started off with pickled eggs. So this is one jar left there, which is nicely brined, and it's a great little snack, right? Pickled eggs. I remember when I used to go on business trips over to London, it was a very common thing that you would have also chicken eggs somewhere in a bar as a quick snack, right? And so we started off first doing pickled eggs, but the regulations around pickled eggs is actually, depending on what state you're in the United States, is actually even trickier because it's for human food consumption than some of the dog treats are. So and the process of making it takes time. So this is kind of more like of a hobby for my own supply. But in regards to the pets, I quickly realized, for example, just by looking at my dog, right? Number one, she got a bit, how to say, a bit bougie. She wouldn't eat her normal food anymore without a quail egg on top, right? It was kind of, okay, where's my quail egg? She's, Hazel is my dog, and she stares at me until the quail egg is not on her food. She's not going to start eating. And I realized it on her fur that it became just shinier. She started to look healthier. And I realized the health benefits for myself as well. I used to eat, a full Irish breakfast when I was in Ireland, and I kind of continued that here in the US with some variation. But when I started to eat quail eggs, I realized also it's just better on my stomach. What I liked a lot is I could portion it perfectly. So, with the tiny egg, you typically use like 3 or 4 quail eggs to kind of substitute for 1 chicken egg. So sometimes I have 8 eggs, quail eggs, which is like 2.5 chicken eggs, for example. So you can portion it nicely. And I felt it on my skin as well. And I talked to other quail farmers, and some people went into quail farming because, for example, one farmer I know, his wife was allergic to the proteins in the chicken egg. And the quail egg has different type of proteins in there. And she had no allergic reactions to the quail egg. So that's when he started raising quail. So his wife could have scrambled eggs in the morning. Of course, there can be still people allergic to pretty much anything out there, right? To quail eggs, for example, as well. Or I've heard of people, they're allergic to garlic, believe it or not. So this kind of intrigued me. And I looked into it and I said, okay, so what can be done? And one of my top sellers, for example, my daughter had the idea for that. It's called the wing on the string, which is simply a quail wing. And on the quail wing, there is no meat on it, really. Not like a chicken wing, right? It's really just feathers and bones. And you can simply just dehydrate it. You put the natural string around it, and there you go. You got a cat toy or a toy to play with your puppy with. And it's a safe toy to play with. I once didn't watch my dog Hazel, and she had a little sit down and had 10 quail wings in one go. The feathers everywhere on the floor, but the next day she pooped some feathers and she was fine because those bones break down easily. They are not as sharp-edged as chicken bones are. So I was like, okay, cool. So an accident happened that she accidentally ate her toys, but nothing happened, no consequences, not like those plastic toys, what you find dogs or cats playing with, and people, of course, I would panic as well if my dog accidentally swallows a plastic toy. You hear all these horrific stories about, emergency operations to get that out again, and the vet bills which come with such procedures. So I was like, okay, if I want to do anything in regards to pet toys, it needs to be safe. And for example, with the wings I offer for bird dog training for hunters, who want to train their dogs to retrieve a game bird. Obviously, if you use the real thing for the training, then the training itself is also more effective. So kind of developed, and with all those ideas, we started to use parts of the birds people would normally throw to their pigs, right? Suddenly we can have a value added chain in the production for the meat, and then the byproducts like the wings, the feet, the heads, and all that stuff. That helps the farmers, right? If you think about the farmers right now, gas prices are going up, feed prices going up, fertilizer is going up. Okay, fertilizer is not as much as a problem for a quail farm, right? But we're still gonna have the feed bill, the fuel bill, the energy cost as well, right? Birds need heat, or the other way around. In a bigger scale, birds need cooling, and that means that consumes energy. So for a farm, every extra penny to be made is helpful. So I created that network of farms where the farms can supply their extras, wings, heads, spines, and so on, directly to me. I do the quality control, and then it's being packaged. And for the farm, it's easy money to be made as substitution to their feed bill, right? And for me, that was very important as well. I always wanted to be engaged in the community I work in. And you probably know it as an entrepreneur. It's often like you feel like the lone wolf out there. You sit in your office like I do. I have my office in the basement with the green screen behind for my YouTube videos and stuff like that. And you're often quite like, more or less alone doing the job, right? And so through the community building I did there, and being involved in the industry with some other associations, basically, made contact with other farms, and I realized they need some help with marketing, on go-to-market, right? How do I package something that it doesn't go bad, right? All those things, the logistics. How do I ship eggs? I mean, I have done so many different versions of packaging to make sure that I have the least amount of breakage, for example. So those are all the things I learned over the years, and now I pass on that knowledge to people as well, free of charge on my platform. And I do have a coaching program as well, if somebody really, wants to launch their product on Amazon or things like that. But I try to help now the small people. In my old job, I used to help the multinational or national big insurance and bank companies and manufacturers. Used to save these big corporations a ton of money in my old job. Now I changed roles, and now in my business, I help small businesses to make money, and also rural farms, which might not have access even to a farmer's market to sell their products, help them to go online and sell their products online nationwide. I enjoy doing that, and the feedback I get from the people I work with is awesome. So I'm gonna keep doing that until I eventually retire in a couple of years. We'll find out. A farmer is usually not retiring early.
I think also when you look at quail farming as well, is notoriously like hard to make money from quail farming, I think historically. But again, a lot of that is down to the value proposition, because again, if you look at dairy farming, the value isn't in the milk, it's not in the cheese, it's in the whey. And if you look at most forms of like sophisticated agriculture, the money never comes from the source you actually expect. And so I think what you're doing in terms of like quail farming is really interesting, because what you're doing is you're taking something like the wings, which is basically a waste product, or the feed or the heads, and you're giving it value, and like I say, giving people that framework to sell it into the pet industry where it can be a very valuable thing. And actually, I think when we talked before, I think the wings are probably more valuable in some ways than the meat, to be honest, because they have so, which again is on its head. But again, if you look at the dairy industry, whey used to be fed to pigs, and now they produce milk for whey. They produce cheese for whey. Cheese is now a byproduct of whey, because there's so much demand for whey. And this is the thing with like valorizing co-products. that actually, by valorizing those co-products, you can actually like build up like successful businesses for people.
Yeah, and that's something I realized rather quickly, in regards to the value, even the value of a quail egg, right? I made once a lovely diagram. I'm happy to share that with you. But if you look at it, an egg is produced for a couple of pennies, right? It depends on where you are in the country, right? But if you speak of just pure production cost, you're talking between 15 to 35 cents a single egg, right? So that's high if you compare that to the big chicken when you go to the supermarket, except for last year here in the US, where you pay like $10 for a dozen of chickens, which was for me, for example, also funny, right? Coming from Europe, you buy 10 chicken eggs in the supermarket, not 12 like here in the US, for example. Right. Also, where do you find your chicken eggs or your eggs in general, right? In a supermarket over in Ireland or in Austria, wherever. They are not in the cooling section because they leave the natural bloom on it. Like pretty much the entire world leaves the natural bloom intact. Here in the US, our regulation is that we have to wash the eggs in a specific way. So it washes off the natural protection. Now suddenly you have to cool it and you have all the cool chain coming with that. And so that's weird. I wonder if that's ever going to change over here. But so if you look at it. So if you produce eggs for fresh eggs, you get like a certain amount of money for it. The next value is if you sell those same eggs, but they are fertilized as hatching eggs to other breeders, to hobbyists, to teachers who want to, teach that in the classroom about how is a bird hatching and all that. Suddenly that same egg becomes a higher value because it's a hatching egg, right? People do something with it. They're not just having that egg for breakfast. They actually multiply the flock, right? So out of my flock of my couple of hundred birds here, suddenly, those eggs go all out in the country and those people hatch those eggs. Hatch rates are variable, of course, depending on the treatment of the eggs in shipping. If they have rough shipping, then maybe only 20% hatch or even nothing hatches. If they have a better shipping and the person has a good incubator from a good supplier, a professional grade incubator, then obviously your hatch rate is higher up as well when you have better humidity and then temperature control. And then they take that egg, which they bought for maybe $1 online, and then a bird comes out. A bird can be sold locally for $10, right? So you have kind of the value added thing there. And then what I have discovered through another business I was networking with as well, and what I'm successfully running now as well is you can sell a dozen of eggs for $200. No problem. I've sold that 4 times this month. And that's what I do with my software as well with QuailOS. It has rentahatch.com connected to it, where I provide for homeschooling families, for schools, for just families in general, a rental experience where I say, listen, here's the incubator, here's a brooder box, here's a dozen of quail eggs. You pay me $200 and you get an online course about quail. You get phone support and you do the hatching experience at home or in the classroom, and you can bring back the chicks. So you can bring back only the roosters. But you can basically hatch quail at home, do the whole experience. I charge a reasonable price for it. So they come, pick up the equipment, they see the daddy and mommy birds there. It's always great for the children, of course. It's a whole experience for the family. Once the chicks hatch, right, it's exciting for the kids to see the little chicks running around. And once they get stinky, they can bring it back. If they decide to, hey, we want to keep them because we want to have fresh eggs, you can keep the eggs, then they just bring the equipment back. So by just doing that for my small farm here in New Jersey, I have an incubator anyway, and if it runs idle, I might as well rent it out. And so I had that now around Easter. Now I have 3 incubators still out. 1 came back already. So it's an extra added value for my farm, but I also actually spread the word about quail because most people don't know quail. Everybody knows chicken and ducks, but quail is not as well known, at least here in the US. I think also in Europe, maybe not as much. And that is a great bird which produces good meat and lays daily eggs, maybe smaller eggs. So we do some educational things with that as well for actually a reasonable price, because when you go here bowling with your family, you easily pay $150 for 1 hour entertainment. So
it's funny because like when I was Obviously, I'm aware of like from my upbringing, but it was always we always used them in aviaries to eat all the seeds on the floor. So like if you had like a load of parakeets and canaries and this sort of stuff, you would have 3 or 4 quail just running around and they would eat all the crap off the floor, to be honest. So
The cleanup crew, yeah.
where they would like the canaries and all the budgies, they would flip all the seed out and then the quails used to eat it all. But I'd never seen quail farming as such, because again, like I think there's still like a relative newness to it, but also I think just from let's say from a pet food perspective, I think there is like a demand all the time for novel proteins, because there is such relative high incidence of allergies to chicken and beef that I think that like people are always looking for a different protein source which they can try. And like I say, I think for smaller dogs especially, it gives a lot of different options. I mean, because obviously you do things like the feet and you do the spine and the meat and the heads and this sort of stuff. And again, it's not like big batch produced, and it doesn't suffer from the same economic pressures, I think, of like large chicken farming. And so because they don't take up anywhere near as much room.
Yeah, it is easier to enter it, and I mean you can start doing that in your garage or in a shed outside. Obviously, there's no such thing as free-ranging quail, right? I mean, yes, you add an aviary as well. With an aviary comes, of course, other complications, such as for meat production, it's great because the birds just grow out there naturally on the floor, which is nice. But fertility rates, of course, drop if they're in the aviary setting, because, the hens, if they are speedy, they get away from the roosters, so the eggs are not as fertile. And then also logistically, those eggs, they are being laid in the dirt on the ground. So that's more like, okay, for my own consumption, that's fine. But when I use the aviary, it's usually just to grow out birds for meat. And a quail is a cage bird in the end of the day. Because if you want to have a clean egg production, to minimize any risks of salmonella or other diseases, right? You don't want the eggs being on the floor. You want to have an egg rollout. What is great about quail is their body temperature is higher, so the risk of salmonella or other diseases is much smaller as well compared to a chicken egg. But it's a great entry level animal for a farm, or even just homestead, or a family who wants to have some birds, some eggs from their backyard, right? The noise level is absolutely minimized. The natural birds around here on my property make more noise than my quail, including the roosters. I have had no single complaint from any neighbor about noise. Smell is another thing, because they poop a lot, so you need to have a good waste management in place, proper composting, or utilization of the waste, or to just dispose of the waste correctly, that you don't get any complaints about that. But other than that, it's a great entry-level bird, and I see it over the years now. A lot of people enter that industry as well. Existing farms add on quail to their property because those eggs are cute. They are not that easy to find in the supermarket. They are there in some supermarkets. You find them. Often those eggs are shipped in from Canada rather than being US produced. So it's a niche product. And to start off with it, it's a couple of $100 to get the equipment, your first cages, and you're up and running, and then you can scale from there. So a lot of people enter that market. Not everybody, calculates their prices well. So you see a lot of people exiting that business again as well. But the ones who do it correctly, those breeders or producers, like I do with my business, those hatcheries, who specialize in quail, those are the guys which see in the longevity. Of course, we have to fight certain things like how we do advertising, because Google, for example, considers an egg as a live animal. I mean, if I don't incubate it, it's not really alive, is it? But so you cannot do really advertising proper on certain platforms for it. Facebook doesn't allow the sale of live animals, even it's an hatching egg, right? I get it if they don't allow it. I'm also not a big fan of it to ship live birds across the country. I've done it a few times, but I rather like it if somebody comes locally and picks them up, and those birds have a small car ride rather than, doing some trips around the airports here.
Yeah, I think
it's challenging, but it's awesome too.
I think as Europeans as well, we kind of look at like how people post stuff, like birds, like because you're not allowed to do it in Europe. So the idea of posting a reptile or posting like 10 ships in a post, like to us sounds crazy, but it is commonplace in America.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
okay, like just going onto your system, because obviously, like with your system, you really give people the framework not only to build their business, but also to again use all the parts, like use like get maximum money for their production. Like first of all, how did you start it? But then also, like, how have you seen it build and like the difference it's made to farms? Because I think, especially for you with the dog treat business, it allows you to scale because, like, obviously you live in a residential area. You can't suddenly, if you're selling thousands of quails a week, you can't put thousands of quails in your back garden, you know. But through your operating platform, you can link with other farms and use their production, and like like I say, it will help each other in that sense.
Right. So it's interesting how that happened with my with the Quail network, and out of the Quail network developed then the QuailOS system. Right. So I had an accident on my lawnmower. I had one of those ride-on lawnmower, and as you do in the summertime, you have to cut the lawn every 2 weeks or so. That looks nice. And I got stuck on the root, and that really messed up my back. And I was like 2 years in with Quail. My website was up and running. I already sold the eggs on Amazon as well. And suddenly I have this accident, and my doctor tells me you're not allowed to lift anything heavy. And those feed bags are like 40 pounds. So I was kind of out of luck, and I had to give up on Quail for about 6 months because I just could, I could barely walk. I really messed up my back. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? I had already some people who helped me out with wings. I had like a gentleman up in New York State and another gentleman down in Louisiana. I met them online through a group on Facebook, and they already supplied me with wings. And so I asked them, hey guys, I had this accident. I still have customers. Do you want to sell me your quail eggs or ship them directly to my customers? And this is kind of how the network started a couple of years back. I think it's now 4 or 5 years back. So I needed the technology for that to be able to, get the order in, then assign it to another farm that they can fulfill it, that we have a packaging slip with the information on it, that we all follow the same packaging procedure, that we have the packaging material in place. So there's a lot of logistics with it. Thankfully, my wife, she works in logistics for a big company. And so she helped me out with certain things as well, with advice and things like that. And so I got that in place, and that started off well. The guy in Louisiana was super happy because he locally could sell those eggs for half the price than I was able to pay him. For him, that was really awesome. The guy in New York, similar story. He didn't have to go to the farmer's market anymore with rain and shine, so he could just work out of his premises to package up the eggs and save himself the cost of fuel and 8 to 10 hours on a cold day on the farmer's market. It's not a pleasure either. So that's how it started. And then from there, I used at first third-party software. I needed a shipping software. I needed an accounting software to make sure everybody gets paid and my books are all in order. Right? I needed some stuff for marketing and so on. And all those software subscriptions add up as well, right? So I was easily paying $500 a month just for the software I needed to operate my business. And so with all that in the back of my head, I was like, I have to develop something which is easier. And I was first using some simple scripts. And then I figured, okay, let's code some a software package, which is also available as on your mobile phone, to do simple things like bird inventory. How many birds do I actually have? Ask a quail farmer how many birds he has, and he will say like maybe 500-ish, or maybe 1,000-ish, around 20,000 maybe. So record keeping is a bit of a troublesome thing. I used to do that too. Spreadsheets here and there, and it's just very complicated, right? To be organized. And so I figured I need to do something to be organized. Because suddenly, it developed, it took off, and we sold so many eggs. Then suddenly 14 farms who just started to ship for me. And then we branched out as well. I mean, not just ship eggs, we ship made products like a certain plant which grows down in Florida, or we started with honey as well, or all kind of homesteading products, right? So we need a kind of a system, and that's what I did with QuailOS, that I bring that system now, not just to my own network of farms, but to any farm out there. I launched it 3 months ago, and we have now over 100 farms using the software. They get great shipping rates. They can do the MPIP filing with one click rather than taking 2 minutes for each order just to fill out the paperwork for the government. All their accounting is in there. They hook up their bank account, and with rules. It took me 2 hours a month to just do my accounting to actually know if I make a profit or a loss. Now it takes me 2 minutes to do my accounting every month after I coded the software. And in times of AI, obviously, right? I mean, I come from an IT background, and I used to do websites in this already. So with AI, obviously, the time to develop now specific software for a niche like quail farms and poultry farms is nowadays, I worked on that for 3 months. In the past, something like that, to code something like that would have taken you 3 years. Utilize all the technologies available to bring that to people, to make sure it's secure. We integrate with platforms like Shopify, for example. So you have then your order intake on Shopify, and then the fulfillment within QuailOS, and all the compliance documentation in there as well. So it was an evolution. I see it, and I know it from people in the industry. There is already farms working together. Hey, there's a neighboring farm. Hey, I was running out of eggs, but I have this customer coming. Okay, I help you out. So now that can be done on a bigger scale within the software as well. For example, where farms can drop ship for each other, for example. Same story, what Shopify does with Shopify Collective is basically available in QuailOS as well. So it just helps people to overcome the technical hurdle. I was throughout my experience talking to other farms. Farmers are great with the animals and taking care of the animals, but not every farmer is great with IT, right? So I kind of fulfill there the IT component to say, listen, this is the software. It's easy to use. I do weekly training videos about specific sections of the software, where people can jump on a live YouTube call and ask a question, say, how do I do this? How do I do that? Right? Or how can I increase my farm profit? And then I show them the different options which are built into the platform. And if they utilize it correctly, then it's simple for them to make some extra money for the farm. And obviously it's then, supporting the small companies with camping trip with the kids, right? With the kids doing summer camp or all those lovely things, which cost a lot of money. And so I have a lot of joy when I hear then stories from other farms telling me like, thanks, Christian. Now finally, I'm in the black rather than in the red with my quail project, for example.
Yeah, and I think it solves one of the biggest hurdles, which is like scalability for the seller.
Mm-hmm.
But also, a lot of people aren't salespeople, or they're not good. They're not good on Amazon, or they're not good on Shopify, or they live in an area of the country which there's no natural consumers for their products. And so, by being within that ecosystem, it gives someone like you, who has your own quail dog treat brand, scalability, because you can buy all these parts. But then also for them, if they just want to farm, they can just farm, and
Exactly.
the orders can come through. So again, it works on so many levels. And look, I think the bigger you get, it's the more farms that are involved. It's going to become a more and more successful system again, because as other innovative people come in, they'll go, okay, there's going to be something else you can do with a quail nobody else saw coming, and again, it will give them, like everybody within that community can kind of feed off of it.
Yeah, it's. I think it brings the entire industry a bit forward, because it's often, considered as a kind of, as a hobby project. But the ones who do it correctly and have a system in place to just be able to, fulfill the orders quickly, because consumers are used to, get their stuff quick nowadays. Everybody is trained on Amazon 1 or 2 day delivery, which is with eggs obviously not possible because you can't just store them in an Amazon warehouse. So, but that gives you an advantage when you do the door-to-door thing. And there's a lot of software companies out there who cater to that specific market already. Well, if I say a lot, I mean, I did my market research before I coded QuailOS. And I know there is like a couple out there, a few providers who do help you to sell your produce or help you to sell your meat if you have cattle farming and pig farming and all that. There was nothing specific really for poultry. You have your flock management apps, which are full with commercials. So you don't actually see your data anymore. There's just advertising everywhere. What they do to kind of monetize their app or their software. If you look at QuailOS.com, you won't see any commercial banners distracting you from your data. There is a free tier. In there, you can manage as many birds, flocks, meat processing, parts processing. You can have as many records in there as you want. I don't limit that, and that's available for free. And then later, if you want to get better shipping rates, or if you want to get some additional features, such as hooking up your bank account, that you do the accounting with it, then I charge a bit money. But the most expensive tier I have is $29. So that's like the cost of a bag of feed, right?
Wow.
If I buy a bag of feed somewhere in the feed store, I pay $20 for it, right? And I go through a ton of feed every month. So for the farmer, the hurdle or the financial burden is very low compared to if you get your QuickBooks and your ShipStation and all those software subscriptions you need to actually fulfill orders and do your accounting. You're easily up with like $150 or more. I want to have it available for farms because I know how hard it was to start out with my little farm here. But yeah, the ecosystem I built is there for people to learn from each other. We have an academy in there as well, so people can offer courses as well. Somebody, it's not just limited to birds anymore because people raise rabbits as well. And if somebody wants to get into the topic of raising rabbits on the farm because it might go well with the quail you already got, then we have people who offer an online course within QuailOS. Some are free courses, some are paid courses. And then people can use that to educate themselves and then branch out into different farm enterprises. The way a farmer looks at his farm is it's small little enterprises, right? The chicken is one enterprise, the duck is one enterprise, the quail is one enterprise, the cattle, if you're into big animals, is one enterprise. And the same way I kind of run my company, it's like multiple companies in one company, but that's what you need to do on a farm as well to make a living, because you hardly can rely on just one type of animal or one type of produce on your farm. I do with quail. I don't have the space to have other animals here, but I kind of cover the entire ecosystem of quail. And I guess that's why I'm still in business and I'm not planning on exiting anytime soon. I'm going to retire with this. I'm not planning on going back into a corporate office selling IT systems. I mean, I do sell IT systems now, but not for corporations anymore. Yeah. It's overall, I think it's just a great industry to be in. And when you see people starting out with it and they see their first successes, they see the first chicks hatching and they get excited. And then the first egg is laying. And I get constantly text messages from customers like, oh my God, I got my first egg. Why is there no shell on it? Because, one of the first eggs a bird lays, there might be no shell around it. It might be a bit rubbery. I call it a hazel egg, that when my young birds start laying those eggs where the shell is not fully built around it or not at all, it's just yolk and the membrane. Okay, there you go. That's a dog for hazel, right? But when I have customers reporting that back to me, and I meet many parents who involve their children with that as well, where the quail kind of becomes a pet as well. I call it a pet with benefits because it lays an egg what you can have for breakfast. It's just adorable to see that because, I'm coming from the Austrian countryside, right? I grew up next to a farm. And my grandmother, she was a farmer's daughter. She was one of 13 children. So she told me always, about what happened on the farm. In the Second World War, they were kind of lucky because they had farm animals, so they had butter, they had meat, right? They could help other people to survive the war because they had a big farm. They were 13 children. That's like a whole army of farm workers right there, right? And so I come kind of from that background. And for me, it's important also for my children that they know where their food is coming from. Because if you ask some children, when I used to live in Germany, there was this chocolate commercial from Milka, right? With this purple cow. And then you would ask children on the street, what color is the cow? And they would say purple because they see it in the commercial all the time. Then it's like, my God, right? So part of my work as well, what I really enjoy doing is to educate people. Where is your food coming from? Ask a bit what is in your food, right? We are not using any vaccines. We are not using any hormones to grow these birds. There is nothing in the treats. There is no artificial fillers or coloring or nothing. There's just nature in there. And for me, that's personally so important that I bring that message across as well to people. Ask what's in your food. Your meat is not coming from a supermarket. There is a producer out there, and often it is mass production. And yes, I'm guilty of it too, because it's hard to find other options out there. And you can only do so much on your own kind of scale, what you can maintain. For example, at least I can tell people, listen, I know exactly what's in my eggs. I eat my eggs raw because I'm not worried about any diseases out there. I see those birds every day, multiple times a day. I know where my food is coming from in regards to my breakfast, right? And that makes me just happy. And if I can transport that message out there to people as well, to question a bit more often, where is your food coming from? And if there is a farm stand somewhere when you drive to work and there is eggs, if you live in the countryside, then stop there and buy it there rather than in the supermarket. You help a farmer, you help a family. And this product is a great product, right?
Also, as part of the software, you also hold people to standards as well, don't you? That's a key part of it as well, because again, I think that when you are doing, let's say, intercompany buying or like community buying, whatever you want to call it, actually having like strong standard guidelines is super important as well.
It's really important if you want to deliver a constant product, consistency in your product over time, right? Because just recently, for example, now with the 250-year anniversary of the United States, right? The USDA, the Department of Agriculture, announced a new labeling, the product of USA. So that's kind of a new label US businesses can use if the product is born, processed in the US. So there's a few criteria, and that's something we do in our software. We have a library in there. People can access the library where we have white papers. So when I research something for my farm, I always think of how can other farms benefit from it as well, what I do, right? And I do this now since years for my network, and now I do it even for a bigger scale with the software for all the farms who can sign up there for free. So with this new label requirement, you want to make sure you're within compliance. So you need to have certain documentation. When did the bird hatch? When was the bird processed? And then the labeling itself, it's pretty straightforward. Actually, you can use that product of USA label. You can slap that onto your product listings, onto your product itself. You don't need to ask for any approval of it. As long as you keep documentation to show that the bird was grown and processed here in the US. And the current politics are a bit around America first as well. And even though I'm European still, I still have an Austrian passport, maybe not much longer, we'll find out. But I was always a big fan, regardless where I lived in the world, right? I grew up in Austria, lived in Ireland for many years, like you did, and then in Germany. For me, it was always important to buy local. Local is just, you can't beat it, because why would you buy a product which was on a plane for thousands of miles or on a truck for thousands of miles if you can buy it local? I'm a big believer in supporting the local economy. And so if I have a choice in the supermarket and I see a product from Canada or I see a product from the US, even if the US one is sometimes a bit more expensive, I'd rather buy the US one than something shipped in from another country. I'm sorry, but I want to support the community and the businesses around me where I live rather than somewhere else. And I think everybody should be that way. I mean, in the UK or in Ireland or anywhere in the world you go, I think most people have that mindset. And I think that's important, as we know that energy resources are somehow limited. Right now, we see the effects of it when we go to the gas station, right? Everything becomes more expensive with transport either way. Then go and buy local. And that's what I do with the software. I try to educate people, regardless what topic it is. If it's your farm vehicle, to track the mileage, to be compliant with the IRS, with the Internal Revenue Service, when you do your taxes at the beginning of the year, like we just had the tax season here in the US. And so you need to prove how many miles did you drive on business, how many miles did you drive private, right? So you can track that for free as well in QuailOS on your mobile phone. You can even use the voice button and say, hey, I was driving 50 miles to the local feed store. Boom, you have it tracked. You can download it. You have it iOS compliant at your fingertips. And when you do your taxes, you know exactly, you can prove it, regardless if you do the mileage deduction or the standard deduction. You have to keep a mileage locker. I used one on my phone. Cost me $20 a year just to lock my mileage, right? And I was like, why? Why would I pay $20 for just tracking my mileage on my phone if I can code it myself? And that's available for free now for every farm here in the US. They just need to log on QuailOS.com and start locking their mileage. Then they're already compliant with that part in regards to the taxes. Education is important, yeah.
I suppose another move, I don't know if this is something you're already doing, but also I guess there's probably deals to be done where you can I mean, because obviously feed costs are big, maybe like some kind of group feed cost price where you can work with mills or like I say, or equipment companies or, and again, look, I think as you scale, this gets easier and easier to do and more powerful. So I think, look, you've still got a huge amount of room in terms of where this goes long term, which is it's very exciting. I think from my end, like seeing what you're doing, because I think it gives what you're doing scalability. It gives you raw materials. It gives businesses the chance to actually grow certain things out and try certain things and not have to worry about, like today I've only got 200 birds, but what about if I need 10,000? You have access to that through your wider community. So I think it gives you a huge amount of opportunities as businesses to grow and scale.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. I mean, it keeps growing. We have an option. People can ask for a feature request as well. So if they miss something within the software, they describe what's needed, and then it's being released with the next release. So it's being active developed. We display a roadmap as well on the software itself, where people see what do we plan. For example, certain automatizations, right? If I wanna fill up the water for my birds, right now I go on my phone and click a few buttons, and the birds have fresh water again. I mean, they have constantly fresh water either way, but with the cage system, what I'm using, the water is on top, right? So you have two options. You go up there with the ladder and fill it up, or you kind of build an automated water system. And things like that might actually flow then into the software itself as well. Or hatching telemetry, like where you can actually read out from a thermostat the conditions in the incubator and see that within the software. A lot of different scenarios. In regards to buying equipment and things like this, I had within my own network an option. I called it Undique Barter or pay with parts. So people had the option to supply me with parts like wings or spines and all that stuff. And they have then basically a savings account in a way. But I'm not a bank, but basically they ship me the parts, and then with those parts, they can pay for a new cage or for a new incubator. And they get that also on a discounted rate compared to what it normally retails for. But that's something I did already on a small scale. Thinking about it, if we're going to do that on a bigger scale for all the farms which use the software. And so that's something we'll probably roll out in the future as well. In regards to feed, we have some people who actually produce their own feed in the community as well. They have their feed kind of routes where they distribute it. We want to work there with some bigger companies as well. Right now, we are still in the beginnings for QuailOS with only a bit over 100 farms on the platform. So, if you go somewhere here in the US, as it is, right, if I would go to a big brand and say, listen, I have here 100 farms, then they will say, yeah, great, come back when you have 10,000, right? So, but there is, of course, with the scale, there is a lot of possibilities in the future. What I focus on right now is help the farms to reduce their expenses in regards to their subscriptions, because I talk to some farms spending thousands of dollars every year just to do their accounting. And so that's already a big point where we can start to help them reduce their expenses on their software side to help them to scale then their production. But yes, there's a lot of synergies we can use. And yeah, and I hope more people will adopt it to use the software. Like with everything new, it takes a bit time until the news is spreading around. But thanks for giving me the chance to talk a bit about it today on your podcast as well. I'm sure you have some US listeners as well who might be interested in using a software like this. And then we take it from there. The community is active, and yeah, we're going to keep working on it to make things usable here.
Yeah, so look, thanks a million, Christian, for coming on. Just let people know how they can get in touch and how they can actually, if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to download the application, what's the best way of doing it?
You see maybe here on the screen, Undique.us, that's my kind of retail website. But through that, you can get in touch with me. There is a link then as well to QuailOS.com. So on either platform, there is a contact option there if you want to get directly in contact, have a quick chat. Or just check it out on the website. There's a link to my YouTube and there's some blog posts describing all I do.
So just for people listening and not like viewing, so it's undique.us is the website, and QuailOS is spelled
like the bird, and OS as in operating system, and then .com.
So, cool. Mm-hmm. Thanks a million, dude. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Joseph. Have a good rest of your day.
Cheers, man.
QuailOS.com. Thank you for watching.